As far as the potential advantages or benefits of probiotics, one of the areas that has probably been well talked about would be the area with lactose intolerance. So oftentimes with your patient populations that may have lactose intolerance, they may be able to tolerate yogurt. And the reason is that we have these live cultures in there, and these probiotics actually act as the enzymes, as lactase would, to break down the lactose. So again, that is one area for probiotics to be utilized for individuals with lactose intolerance. Another area, which is probably receiving the majority of the attention, is in regards to various types of diarrhea, whether it's for prophylactic use or, again, going back to the fact that we tend to recommend or have the prescriptions for various antibiotics. We tend to see a lot of antibiotic-associated diarrhea. And just one, for example, that's been well-researched, the Lactobacillus GG, again, what we're looking at is can we decrease the incidence as well as the duration of these more liquid loose stools that could be the unfortunate outcome of using antibiotics. Again, since you're wiping out not only the detrimental bacteria that you're targeting, but you're also going to take with it some of the bifidogenic bacteria and disrupt that equilibrium. And also the specific bacteria, C. diff, that we tend to, again, have as a very challenging patient population. And one of the ways that we can try to address this, especially once we've identified that a patient is C. diff positive, is by providing probiotics for the increase in the good bacteria to help with the integrity of the GI tract and hopefully minimize that colonization or the growth or proliferation of the C. diff bacteria. If we can minimize that, the goal hopefully is that we can certainly shorten the amount of time that the individual does experience the diarrhea as it is related to the C. diff population or overpopulation within the colon. Some additional advantages or benefits, again, immunity. As I talked about with the use of prebiotics, because prebiotics feed, literally, those probiotics, obviously you're going to see the same potential advantages or benefits by actually adding the microorganisms themselves. So here we see there's an increase in IgA production, and again, with secretory IgA, that helps tremendously with fighting against those various antigens, and again, just a very strong immune defense. We've also seen where there's increased phagocytic activity of macrophages, so we're stimulating those immune cells, if you will, again, to help protect against the detrimental effects from various viruses, bacteria, whatever is out of balance, if you will, for otherwise what would be a healthy individual. And certainly the role of those cytokines or those inflammatory mediators, because they're going to drive that phagocytic activity, they're going to drive IgA production. So another key area where probiotics could be very advantageous. And then another area that's being researched is the area of probiotics, and specifically with colon cancer. As I mentioned, the majority of the bifidogenic or the good bacteria we will find in our colon. And what we have found is, of course, we've seen some association between the high-fat, low-fiber diets and an increased risk for colon cancer. So there's actually been some animal studies as well as human studies looking at what the role of probiotics could induce or help minimize that risk for colon cancer. And the majority of the research is really looking at this anti-tumor activity that it could be accounted for with the use of butyrate. And again, butyrate is one of those short-chain fatty acids that's released during the fermentation process. And what some of the studies are suggesting is that butyrate may induce a growth arrest as well as cell differentiation and actually upregulate apoptosis. And these activities could actually be very significant for possible anti-tumor activity. So remember, when you have more of those detrimental bacteria present within the colon, the longer they are, if they're able to adhere to the mucosa, the longer they're there, they have more opportunity for communication, if you will, that cell-to-cell crosstalk to send various signals and allow for precancerous cells to become cancerous cells. So again, this is an area where we're seeing additional research to support the role of using, additional probiotics to to help, and it's certainly not suggesting that we will prevent colon cancer, but what the researchers are looking at is, can we reduce the risk for colon cancer? And just wrapping up here, I would like to talk about the safety of probiotics, because certainly people think about probiotics as actual bacteria, and why would I want to eat bacteria? But again, identifying that these are bacteria that our body needs, that our body wants, and we certainly want a balance between the bifidogenic bacteria and those that are potentially more pathogenic. And as far as safety is concerned, the use of probiotics, they may not have been called probiotics way back when, but there has been a long history of using these types of bacteria in our diet. In fact, back when we had, the wars and the people had no food and they were drinking these fermented milks, and they were finding that the individuals that were drinking these fermented milks were able to maintain their health or have very little to no diarrhea, where other people were getting very sick. They've identified that it was the use of these bifidogenic or good bacteria that were in those milks. And as far as the literature or the data that we have available, there's been no published study that had an adverse event or anything related to providing a probiotic to a study participant. Now, again, there are some case reports where someone might not have tolerated a probiotic, and the question here is for those individuals that have a extreme leaky gut, if you will, if they were given an extremely high dose of a certain bacteria, may you find that in systemic circulation upon culture? You could, but the question remains, is that what caused the infection, or is it just because you've been providing them with an increased amount of that probiotic that, yes, you could potentially see that in the culture? So again, as far as those individuals that should be considered closely for using probiotic therapy, one of the areas certainly would be that elderly patient population that's immunocompromised. However, after all the information that I've presented today, it's the elderly that are already at a disadvantage because they tend to not have a good blend of the balance between the good and the bad bacteria. And perhaps it's those immunocompromised patients that could benefit because we can help to rev up that immune system and that inflammatory response. So this is an area, again, where we just need more research. We don't have the data available to say that absolutely everyone can use these probiotics without any risk. And the other area, of course, would be for those premature infants because they do have an underdeveloped GI tract. And so moving on to the next to the last slide, I just want to talk about the availability of these unique ingredients or functional foods, if you will, in the United States. Now, the prebiotics are available in powder packets as a fine powder that you can mix in with water or juices. We also have the availability of prebiotics in yogurt. We also have over-the-counter tablets or chewable tablets of prebiotics. So if you were to go online and put in the keyword prebiotics, there are going to be many opportunities to purchase these unique functional food ingredients. And of course, these prebiotics are available in tube feeding formulas as well as oral supplements. So another opportunity for your patients that may not be able to eat well, not only get the nutrients they need, but also get the advantages of these unique prebiotics. And same for your patients that might be tube fed. As for probiotics, those are available in a powder form. You can also purchase them in capsules. And probiotics, of course, are going to be available in your yogurts and your fermented milk. So there are different ways to get both prebiotics as well as probiotics. And then the last slide, I just want to leave you with a newer term, which is the symbiotics. And this is a term that's being used to identify adding prebiotics and probiotics together, because the goal is to provide a prebiotic with that probiotic, because that probiotic can actually, if you will, travel along the GI tract and hopefully increase the opportunity for that probiotic to make it to the colon intact and adhere to the mucosal lining. So we're starting to see some studies that are looking at not only the effects by using prebiotics alone or probiotics alone, but actually combining these two to see if it helps to promote that more synergistic effect, if you will.